Charles was also limited to his shoulder. And Coach is going to start with an opening statement.
Yeah, I wanted to first start off by mentioning a partnership that was finalized today with Ortho Virginia. We're thrilled to be able to partner with an entity that is known for excellence in medical as well as the sporting performance field. This partnership is going to benefit our team across both the business and football side and continue our goal of emphasizing the health and safety of our players as one of our top priorities for this organization. We'll also be renaming our facility Ortho Virginia Training Center at Commanders Park. I do appreciate the great team over at Ortho Virginia and just wanted to take a second to express our excitement over this new partnership. With that, any questions?
Daniel Wise, do you have a further update on the severity of that injury?
No. For the most part, he did suffer a high ankle sprain, and we'll see how he is day to day. It's not as severe, but he was off to the side, was working with the training staff.
And then obviously this is a big week for Carson Wentz facing the Eagles. You played him back in 2017. What do you remember about what he was doing at that time and how good he was for the Eagles?
Oh, he was solid. I mean, again, you go back and look at the things that he's done, at the beginning of his career, in the middle of his career, and you sit there and it's impressive. I mean, at one time, he had that team 11-3. So it's, he's done some really good things. He's a very capable football player. We're very fortunate to have him with us.
Is there anything that has surprised you through the first couple games with him?
No, to be honest, it's just we as a team, I think, are still finding our way with him. Just learning what he's capable of and learning how he helps us as a football player. And I think as we continue that, we'll continue to have good things happen for us.
Ron, we asked about the defense a lot over the last few days, some of the struggles. Who were some of the guys that maybe stood out to you? I know it looked like Benjamin St-Juste may have had a good game, but who were just some of the guys for you that kind of stood out?
Well, I thought there were several guys that played well. I mean, you start with the defensive line, you really appreciate what Jonathan Duran are doing as a tandem on the inside. I thought both guys played well. Jonathan, considering he had the groin, Duran really stood out, did some really positive things. As when you look at Montez, those things. I thought James Smith-Williams really was solid. I really do. I really thought he had a nice game. And F.A. Obata, we had to move him down into the 3 technique a lot more than we typically would have because of the injury to Daniel, and I thought he handled that fairly well. I thought Jamin did play well. I thought there were some good things that he did. A couple things he's got to work on and continue to improve and get better as a football player, but I thought he did some nice things. And, I think Kendall continues to compete on the outside for us and setting the tone and tempo for us. He was solid. And I think Bobby played pretty well. We got a good group of guys that got to continue to work together and just become more and more comfortable with one another back there.
And the other day you mentioned that you didn't think any issues were schematics, that just some individuals just missing plays or what have you. How hard is it for an individual player to improve during the year? Because obviously the off season is typically where you're making some growth, but with the week to week, how hard is that in season?
I think the part about the in season is really refining your craft now. Now it's to take those little detailed things that when you get a game plan and we talk about, hey, we want you to play with this type of leverage and this coverage. We want you to make sure you understand that we want you to spill the play on this play. Now you work those specific techniques. If I'm going to play with this kind of leverage and coverage during practice, I'm focusing on that leverage. I'm working on where my hand placement's going to be, working on opening my hips so I can flip them and run. If I'm hammering or spilling the run, I'm working on that technique. I want to bring my shoulder down underneath so I get that guy and spill it up over the top to make the ball bounce. I mean, these are techniques now that we've given you a game plan that you follow up and practice and work on and pay attention to.
Ron, first division game of the season. What is it about these games that kind of adds that extra element, extra dimension to it?
Well, first, the familiarity. That's the truth of the matter is that you play them twice a year. You play nobody else twice a year. You play them every year. Then the next thing about it is because it's a divisional game, the thing we all have to understand is if you want to win in your division, you got to control your division. If you finish with a winning record in your division, there's a good chance you've got to win it. So they're very important. Then you're playing at home. You want to defend at home more so than anything else. You want to defend your turf. That's what makes these games so important. So much so that there is a little extra emphasis. It just happens that way naturally.
You'll be going up against a really good quarterback, Jalen Hurts, who's playing at a high level. What kind of challenges does he present to the defense, and how do you contain that type of a mobile quarterback?
Well, the first challenge he presents is that every time he has the ball in his hands, it's a run-pass option. And so that's the thing you've got to be able to do. With him, it's all about discipline. That's one of the big emphasis this week is just discipline. Discipline in your assignment, discipline in how we want you to do your assignment. And we'll continue to focus on discipline against this football team and this football player.
With Jahan, were high on this rookie receiver class coming into the draft, and they're performing pretty well throughout the first few weeks. What have you noticed from Jahan in terms of being ready to play, and are receivers more prepared now to play in the NFL than
you know what, Matt, I think that's a great question because of the fact, you answered it for me. I mean, these guys are coming in and they're much better prepared. They really are. I mean, these guys, because they throw the ball so much in college ranks, that these guys have learned to do specific things because of those. And if you're fortunate enough to find a young man like a Jahan or any of those other guys that were drafted in the first round, those are the guys that they get moved around. They just don't put them in one spot and just stay here. No. So they're moving them from playing the Z, the Y, the X, whatever, and as far as their formations are concerned. And now they learn to run all types of routes. They learn that they got to work on specific types of releases, those types of things. So they're coming to us better prepared as far as that position is concerned.
And with Jahan, why do you think he's been able to be such a red zone target?
Because of his route running. I mean, his route running is very precise. It really is. And I think, of those young guys coming out, I think he's one of the top 2 or 3 guys as far as route running is concerned. I think his routes are very sharp. His cuts are very good. He presents a very good target. But one thing I think is a little deceptive is his catch radius. I don't think people realize that he has such a tremendous catch radius in spite of his size.
Ron, this is a little bit more of a bigger picture football question. When it comes to end-of-game management, end-of-game decisions, what resources and systems do you put in place so that when things are going crazy at the end of a game, that you still know you're going to be able to make the right choice, right decision? Well,
one of the things that we do is a couple times a week, I talk with our analytics guy, and then one time a week specifically, we meet in the morning, myself and 3 of our staff, coaches, and we'll talk about situational football. What we'll do is we'll go through the previous week and anything that happened that's noteworthy. We'll discuss everything from going for it on 4th down. We'll discuss 2-point conversions when the best opportunity is for them. We'll discuss timeout usage. We'll go through a myriad of things to really kind of dive into potential for us. And every week it's interesting. Our guy does a really nice job of finding something that's a little different, and we'll discuss those things. And he is, he's just somebody that gives really good advice as far as those things are concerned as we prepare and get ready for this game.
And how different is that, like the planning and figuring that stuff out in the abstract, and then being able to pull the trigger and make the right decision when you got injuries and you got the next play to call and the play call?
Well, see, that's part of the analytics that you don't have. You can't account for injury. You can't account for momentum swings. So they're really just tools. And as you go through them and you think through them, the potential for it to happen. You have to be prepared, or at least at some point talked about this. And so, we had something, I think it was last year. I'm trying to remember what it was specifically, but it's something we had talked about, a couple of weeks prior, and then it came up in our game. And it was one of the first things we talked about after the game was, man, I'm glad we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. So there is a lot of that you try to retain and remember. That's how important it is because, as you said, when all heck is going loose, you got a couple players missing, momentum swinging, all that kind of stuff, you've got to do it. It was interesting is there is no analytics for the right time to call a fake, whether it be a fake punt or a fake field goal. No, there isn't. There's no analytics telling you when the best time is for that.
And just real quick, do you have a coach or a staffer in your headset on game days?
Yes. Those coaches that are with me during that meeting are all available, as well as our analytics guys available as far as that's concerned. So if there's something coming up, I'll press the intercom button and just I'll ask them, hey, let's talk about this scenario. What are our options going forward? We'll talk about the timeout usage. We'll talk about the opportunity to go for 2, and the opportunity for when's a good area for a 4th down decision to go for it.
You guys played Philly twice, tough last year. They add A.J. Brown. How different does that offense look at what you've seen through 2 games and what you looked at last year?
It's the same offense. I mean, they do what they do. They do it very well. The only difference is, as you said, they got A.J. Brown, and he's a very good football player. He really is. There's a huge discrepancy in targets. I believe he's been targeted 21 times, while the closest next receiver is 11. So he is a bell cow out there. He's averaging 10.5 targets a game, so he's somebody that we most certainly are aware of.
So you mentioned the targets there, and then if you look at Philly's stats, they're first in the league in yards. Is there like a timeline when the stats start to matter more? Is it 2 games in, 4 games in, 6 games in?
I think so, but I think you also have to take into consideration, what or who they've played and how those games have gone. If you look at the 2 games they've played, there were situations where, those games, and you watch certain plays, they matter a little bit more because of the score. And so those are things that you kind of look at as a little something extra, because when the game's close, certain plays come into effect, and they're ones that every time it get into crunch time, this is what they like to do. So that's something that you look at. If it's a blowout, then there's some of those things those are just plays.
There's a lot of talk about William Jackson III being more comfortable in year 2 and how the scheme is something he can get used to. Have you seen signs of that through 2 weeks of him being more comfortable and knowing what he has to do?
I think for the group, it's you see a lot more comfort out there, a little more confidence, but the biggest thing, and again, the thing we talked about as far as last game was concerned, was the explosives more than anything else, and it's one of those things that you have to shore up those little details, as I talked about earlier in this press conference, that there's a discipline to playing this game, and if you're not disciplined and you're not where you're supposed to, they're going to find you, and that's the truth of the matter in this game, because there's you got to give credit to the other team as well.
And the corners and safeties have talked about how their communication is better. They spend a lot of time together in the offseason. So when those explosives happen, are those as a result of some communication gaps still, or is it more post-snap and execution error?
I think it's a combination. I mean, you can look at all 6 of those, and there's a reason why. And as you go through those reasons, you want to make sure those things get corrected and addressed.
What was it like to see Cam back out on the field and wearing pads, and what could he bring to this defense if he plays on Sunday?
There's a familiarity with Cam's play. He's a guy that can give you a little bit of presence in the box as well, a little bit more than the other safeties. He's a nice-sized body, very physical football player, very smart football player, very headsy guy. Communicates very well out there too. So it'll be very nice to have him back on the field for us.
Looking back at the trade for Carson, or even the year before, like when the quarterback market, I guess from when you came into the league as a head coach, did it get more competitive over the years, do you think?
It has gotten much more competitive. I mean, not only is the need for a quarterback very prevalent throughout the league, the people that are willing to do what they can to get the quarterback is even more so. And then the information we get, the analytics we had last year, looking at Carson and studying it, I think really spoke to why he's had the success. I know he's a guy that if you look at his numbers, he's playing to those numbers. Again, last year he was rated very high. I did have the fortune of having a conversation with one of you about that and showing the numbers and talking about the numbers. And that's what it is. You just have to look at those numbers, and that tells you who he is and why he's important to us.
Nikki, last one.
Curtis Samuel, just the way he's come back. Was there a point in the offseason where you looked at him and really thought he was back to normal and could have this type of impact on the offense?
It was when he got out and played in the first preseason game, and just saw him be explosive again. It's one of those things that he's one of those guys that has that knack. I had the fortune of having coached him earlier and seen what he's capable of. Unfortunately, last year we didn't get to see that. And so now we're seeing what his potential is for us as we go forward and hoping we can stay healthy with him and all of our players. We've got a good dynamic group. I like who our playmakers are. And, our skill position, I think, is very good. We've just, again, if we can just stay healthy and we can continue to develop and grow as a unit, as a team, I think, we have some good things ahead of us.
And then looking back on the defense last week, do you feel like you have clear leaders on that side of the ball to help you guys through the adversity and the tough times?
I think we do. I think as we go through this, it's one of those things where because of some of the younger guys, we have to stop waiting for other people to make plays. Some of us try too hard and put ourselves out of position. The other ones are kind of a little, we got to cut loose. If it happens, it happens. But, there's a great little saying that says the play doesn't care who makes it. So if you're where you're supposed to be, doing the things you're supposed to, the play will come to you. And that's one of the things that we got to get across to our young men, that, hey, just do your job as best as you can, and a lot of good things will take care of itself.
All right.
All right, cool. Thank you, guys.